The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to Sangha. So we got a lot of people here. It's nice to see you all. So what I'd like to talk about this morning is what I myself consider to be the Buddhist concept of trust. Okay? And I think, as we know, trust is a concept like commitment or faith that some of us get a little leery when we hear these words sometimes. Maybe with good reason. So I like to go to the dictionary and look up a word because, well, as a kid I couldn't read, so I didn't go to the dictionary very much, but now I can somewhat read. So I looked up the word trust, and the way it's actually a really long definition of trust. There's 8 or 9 different definitions, because whether it's used as a verb or a noun, it means slightly different things. But I'm going to go with the verb meaning. So Webster's dictionary says that trust is a concept. No, where is it down here? Okay. Trust is firm belief or confidence in the honesty, integrity, reliability, justice of another person or thing. And I'll also add that trust is about, as a verb, is about trust in yourself. It's just not about things external to you, but it's about trust in yourself. So as you know, in Buddhism, we take refuge, which is really a form of trust. And we take this refuge in the 3 treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This is one of the first things we do if we want to consider ourselves Buddhists. This refuge, this trust in these things. Great Master Dogen thought these refuges were so essential that he included it as part of our precepts. So those things that help us live our life in a moral and ethical and really happy way. Master Jiyu also really stressed the importance of the 3 refuges. Knowing the nature of people very well as she did, she said that it's somewhat easier to take refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma than it is in the Sangha. Because, of course, the Sangha is people. And people are a little bit more complicated, difficult, interesting. It's a good way to put it. Than, the Buddha was long ago. I mean, even our own Buddha nature, well, it's in here. But things external to us are not necessarily easy things to take refuge in, okay? And she was also pretty clear that you have to take all 3 refuges. It's not sufficient, she felt, if you really wanted to practice Buddhism, to just take this one and that one. Or I'll take this one today, but I'll, Sangha refuge, no. And the Sangha refuge doesn't mean you have to go around talking to people about yourself and practice all the time. It's just the willingness to be and train with other people. So I think that the 3 treasures, and this is all 3 of them, not only provide for us structure, comfort, answers to life, okay, but they also present challenges. And if you want to step into training, you're going to be challenged. It's just the way it is. We don't control all the circumstances. We cannot control the people that are around us. we sure as heck can't control the world. So when we come into this life, okay, we're totally dependent on others. There's this kind of naive trust that a child has until it gets broken. Okay? And you know, the bond between a mother and a child, well, you know, the child is totally dependent on that mother for a while. Okay? So originally, I think most people have this real trust in others. Well, what happens somewhere along the line, you know, sadly, not in, you know, in bad ways, this trust is broken, but somehow your trust is broken. And when your trust is broken, the reaction is not to trust. Somewhat natural, okay? And understandable, and not totally bad that you don't now trust everything. Because the world is a dangerous place. It's also a good place, but it's a dangerous place. You know, if we don't, as a child, if you don't trust everything, there's the old analogy of, you know, getting burnt by the stove, and then you learn not to touch the hot stove. But, you know, it kind of goes out further in life with things. You know, we learn by sometimes being hurt. Well, that's not a good idea, or I got to be careful there. I don't go into that area. Sometimes, you know, if the trust is deep, it causes scars and worse. And that's sad, okay? Personally, I don't wish that to happen to anybody. Okay? But, you know, life doesn't roll along like that. This is the world of samsara. Unfortunately, out of ignorance, hate, people do things that if they really knew better, they wouldn't do. So, excuse me here. In my life, I can say that I was fortunate. You know, I came from a very loving family, and I didn't get hurt that much that I can remember. You know, I mean, there were little things. You know, sometimes the girl I really had a crush on went with somebody else. And, you know, then I just get over it. So, I feel fortunate. Unfortunately, what I did is I hurt other people. You know, we do that until we learn better. Okay? And I want to make it clear here in talking about trust. I'd also say, you know, that if you hurt other people, at least for me, you have a sorrow that stays with you. That's the karmic consequence. I mean, you don't have to wallow in that, but there's a sorrow. It's a karmic consequence. Okay? So I want to make it clear right here that some hurts that happen to us when we are young or later in our life can be very difficult to heal from. I'm not naive. Okay? And as a consequence, sometimes trust becomes a difficult issue for us. The trust of a child, as I said, is a naive trust. Okay? In some ways, it's a blind trust. Well, what we realize as we go on in life is that we have to meld trust and wisdom together. We got to look at what we're going to trust. And sometimes there's cautions, or we can't trust something. It doesn't mean we condemn it, but we can't trust it. Reverend Master Jiyu used to always use this quote, and I think it's an Arabic saying. She said, "Trust God and tie your camel." In the desert, your camel is your means of transportation and shipment. It's carrying your water, it's carrying your food, it's carrying your tent. Okay, if you don't tie the camel during the night, well, when you get up in the morning, the camel could be gone, and you're in trouble. You know, you're in the desert, you're in trouble without water, without food, without shelter. Okay? So spiritual trust is not blind trust. As I said, you have to bring trust and wisdom together. Okay? You have to look at it as, what you're going to trust and think about it. And I would say, keep a bit of an open mind in that regard. As I've said before, if we perceive that we have been hurt or wronged, it's somewhat natural to not trust someone and to be leery of others. If we choose to, we can come to a dead end here. That can be our way of viewing life, not trusting. And we can invest in the little voice that says, I can't trust anyone, ever. Well, that's one choice. Or we can choose to refine our trust. Have a good look at what the problem really is. Just throw out some questions here. Did we go into a situation with expectations or ideals that maybe aren't realistic? We're famous for this as human beings. We've got expectations. Do we have right view? Are we viewing the situation clearly? The mind has an insidious way of clouding our vision. Again, I think if you've been hurt in the past, there's nothing wrong with a healthy caution. And sometimes we have to protect ourselves in lives. It's the way it is. But we don't need to have enormous, excuse the expression, border walls around us. Okay? Sorry, it's a little play on words. Too many expectations of ourselves and others is really the road to disappointment. Okay? It's a basic tenet of Buddhism that things are constantly changing. Stability is not necessarily what we think it is. And as we all know, we cannot 100% always trust our mind. I think that's why many of us come to this practice, because we realize that there's a much deeper refuge. It's for sure that life doesn't go according to our plans. Nothing wrong with plans, mind you, but it doesn't necessarily go according to those. And it's probably pretty certain that we're going to be disappointed if we wait for the world and other people to hand us trust. Okay? Because trust is a two-way street. I won't deny that. But I think it's us that has to make the first step. And it's us that has to continue to walk in that way. Okay? It's not about the perfect situation or perfect interaction. They happen rarely. It's not like everything is a disaster, but it's just, life is kind of different than the movie that plays in our minds. And the thing is, on our part, we can always make something positive and hopeful out of a bleak-looking scenario. We don't have to deny that it's bleak, but we can actually take something from it. Okay? We can stop the wheel of karma right now for ourselves. Okay? It's not about stopping it for other people. It's about ourselves. That's what we have control of. So recently, and I've talked about this in the last 2 or 3 Dharma talks I've given, I read a book by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It's called The Book of Joy. Okay, these are 2 of our real, elder religious statespersons, okay, who've lived remarkable lives and very difficult lives. Okay? And in this book, they talk about the factors that lead the factors that have the greatest influence in increasing our happiness. In other words, the pillars of joy. Okay? And I'm just going to talk about the first one here. You can read the book if you want. The first of the pillars is our ability to reframe our situation more positively. It's not about a Pollyanna view of life. I don't think you can say that either the Dalai Lama or Desmond Tutu suffer from a naive or foolish trust. They're not naive or foolish people. They're remarkable, kind, compassionate people, but they're not naive. They've been through a lot, and I don't think that actually anyone should have to go through all that. It would be nice, to go see all that suffering. But they came out of the tunnel of these horrors with a bright and positive mind. They're grateful for and in life. And that's what they practice daily. The Dalai Lama says that since he had to flee Tibet and live in exile, he's had the opportunity to meet and learn from countless people that he would have never met if he were sequestered in the Patala Palace in Tibet. Tibetan Buddhism has spread throughout the world because people see and hear the Dalai Lama. This would not have happened, I don't think, if he remained in Tibet. That's not a reason for him to have left Tibet as he did, but that's a positive thing. He's not so keen on formality. I'm kind of right in there with him. He says, leaving Tibet, not being the Dalai Lama, having to wear all that stuff that the Dalai Lama wears, he's able to have less formal relationships with people, get to know people better, all kinds of people. And, he over and over again in this book says that he just considers himself one of the 7 billion people on the earth. Nobody's special, just one of the 7 billion. I think I got the number right today. I kept wanting to say 70 billion, but I don't think it's 70 billion, 7 billion. Right. So oftentimes in life we have choices in how we can perceive things. And how we perceive things will shape our lives. If you trust in the basic goodness of human beings, I believe that that's what you'll find. It doesn't mean everybody will be good, but you will see a quality of the goodness of human beings. That they have this quality, and that they manifest it. I think it's unfortunate with the whole concept of at least televised news, that often what you see are the horrors and you don't see the goodness. And stations that balance it a little better, I'm more inclined to watch, because it's not all horrors. Okay? There are a lot of good people doing a lot of good things. If you express care, kindness, compassion, and generosity in your daily life, that's what you're going to see in others too, because it's there. It's being exhibited all the time. Okay. If you get stuck on seeing other people's faults and shortcomings, they, at least in your mind, will fulfill that expectation. It's just kind of how the mind works. None of us is perfect. We're a work in progress. I was listening to this talk by Ajahn Brahm, he's a monk from England who studied with Ajahn Chah in Thailand, and then was he in Australia? Yeah, he's in Australia. Very, very famous. It's all over the internet, and very entertaining as well as good Dharma. But he says that the one thing that we can trust in life is that we will all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. If we didn't, I don't think we'd be here. He also says that a world without trust is a world of fear. We all know what fear does. it scrunches us in. We become kind of. You can see it with people in their body. They're just kind of all scrunched in. We withdraw. We focus on ourselves. We put up walls. And this is all actually real suffering. It's not a fruitful way to practice. To lead away from suffering, we have to open up. Not over-focus on ourselves. Okay? Break down the walls. The Buddha talks about that, breaking down the walls of self and not allowing the house builder of those to build them again. So you got to really, know your mind, know its tricks, know its things it likes to put up as obstacles. And, if we trust people, we're probably going to get hurt again sometime, somewhere, okay? And I think it's likely, or maybe even more likely, that we're going to hurt other people. We make mistakes, okay? It's not great, but it's the way it is, and we can do something about those. And I think that's why we're fortunate to have the practice we do, because with a steadfast, unconditional practice, we can minimize the amount of hurt and getting hurt. And, primarily what we can do something about is ourselves in this regard. We can be kinder and more compassionate to people unconditionally today, not waiting for all the conditions to align so we can then put our bid in. Okay? We actually have this opportunity right now. Life is constantly moving. At best, it isn't all that long. So, time is precious, and the need to do the work of training is paramount. And I think this is something to think about in the new year. Okay, so I talked a little bit about trust here. I think it's an enormous topic. I'm sure I missed many aspects of it. I don't really feel that I could cover it all in this talk or in the time that I prepared for it. But I just want to end with 4 more points. Okay? So trust in yourself is, of course, a good thing. So when we talk about trust, it's not all outer directed. Some of us have a problem with trust in ourselves, and we need to do that. But that trust that I'm talking about is not cockiness. It's confidence. Okay? It's confidence in yourself, in your Buddha nature, in your ability to practice. Whenever Master Ji was in Japan, she said she first had to realize that she could be wrong. It's just kind of this craziness going on around her. And she had to realize, okay, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm perceiving it wrong. Or maybe I'm just perceiving part of it. Then with time and training, she added that she could be right. You can't just go around all the time saying, I could be wrong, I could be wrong. Sometimes we're right. You got to go in and out of them. That's the kaleidoscopic mind and heart of training. And of course, refuge is always a good thing in Buddhism. That we take refuge in each other, because the Sangha is wise and compassionate. It's a fact, and there's people, in all points of training that know a lot more than we know. And we can learn from. I think it's really important to sit still with decisions before we make them. I think it causes less mistakes. So, that's the mind of meditation, the ability to sit still, super important. Okay, my second concluding point is that kindness and the hard work of putting kindness into practice in daily life, rather than succumbing to fear and upset, really works. Okay? It really works. Kindness comes to fruition. Kindness breeds kindness. It's undeniable. Okay? It's actually now scientifically proved if we need that. We know that parts of our brain, when we show compassion and kindness, light up in the best of all ways. Okay? They function well. And this is what the scientists are saying. Okay, third point. So the Buddha talked about friendship, and he expressed the importance of friendship in our practice. It's not this solo practice. We practice together. Okay, we ourselves have to practice for ourselves, but we practice together. And the friendship that the Buddha spoke of is more about a universal friendship. It's not an exclusive friendship, but a universal friendship he's talking. Of course, we get along better, or it's easier going with certain people than other people. That's okay. I don't think that's seems to be the way it is. We're different people, okay, and so different people resonate with us. But again, I'll stress that we need to keep the door open. Watch our selfish likes and dislikes, because selfishness just has a way of getting in there. Okay, be careful in our expectations and judgments of others. Oh no, I did this funny thing here. Oh yeah, no, it's okay still. I had to rearrange my points. But if you've ever seen the comedy The Detective with Steve Martin in it, it's a comedy, okay? So you won't expect great earth-shaking truths from it. But I thought it was quite interesting what they did in it. So one of his chief tools of investigation is to create these lists. This woman, Carlotta, has been murdered. So what he does is he creates this list of friends of Carlotta, enemies of Carlotta. Well, the difficulty is that people are kind of going in and out of those lists. They're not staying on one side of it. And it makes you kind of think a bit. And of course, this is a comedy. But I think in real life we have a way of creating a friends and enemies list if we're not careful. And I just wonder if that's such a good idea. Could we possibly be passing judgment? And could we possibly not be seeing what is actually going on? I don't know. You can train for a really long time and you're still susceptible to that trick of the mind, okay, that you don't actually see clearly. So, I don't know. I don't think that we don't need those kind of lists. I don't think they're fruitful. So let me. The last point. Kind of hope I didn't confuse these, but I don't know. I don't think so. So the last point I wanted to talk about was when the Buddha talked about friendship in practice. Oh God, no. Excuse me, I got confused here. I'm just going to continue on friendship here. Okay. So when the Buddha talked about friendship, he said that a good friend is someone, he lists all these qualities, and one of these qualities is that a good friend is willing to tell us what is hard to hear. Because I don't know about you, but I often want, people that are going to tell me what I want to hear around me. But actually, a good friend is willing to tell us what is hard to hear. Because we all need to hear what is hard to hear sometimes. And hard to hear means we just got stuck. Okay. So last point. I hope I didn't totally confuse that. But the last point here about trust is that the model of a Buddhist monastery is one based on trust. That comes from way back. Comes from the Buddha. We the monks here trust that if we do our practice wholeheartedly, that people will come and that people will support us. And they do. You do come and you do support us, and it's a wonderful thing. When Ajahn Chah went to England with a few of the Western monks to see about establishing a place there, he said, "Oh, you should do the alms round in England." And the monks kind of blanched, well, I don't know, I don't know, that might not go over so good. And so he asked them, he said, "Are people generous in England?" And they said, "Of course they're generous." Well, he said, "What's the problem?" Okay, well, maybe there were some practicalities that, they as Westerners knew about that were good to consider. But the basic thing of generosity, it's universal. It's part of human nature. We, the monastery, trust in people practicing with us. We trust, that people want to come here and practice. It would be kind of lonely if it was just the monks, That's not the way the Buddha set it up. So we trust that people want to come and practice with us, and of course they do. And we trust that when you come and practice, that you keep the rules of the monastery, and while you're here, you participate wholeheartedly in the daily schedule. Pretty simple, really. You don't ask that much of people. And we're glad to have you here. As I say, it would be really lonely, because the practice that the Buddha handed down to us, the practice that Reverend Master Jiyu handed down to us, is one that is for the fourfold Sangha. It's for all of us, okay? And the fact of the matter is that we help each other. It's not like the monks are up on this pedestal here and the lay people here. No, actually, we help each other. We in a very everyday way, we set examples, and without trying to give formal teaching, we learn from each other. And that's a wonderful thing.